the Clemson and South Carolina matchup because I think desperate football team in South Carolina. They won 3 straight, got a chance to get to a bowl game. But more importantly, they have a chance. This is all about offseason narratives in this game. Clemson, I think the narrative that Clemson was trending in the wrong direction, I thought was premature the last 2 seasons. We've talked about it. If they finish 7-5 and lose 2 consecutive times to South Carolina, a South Carolina team that is clearly not as good. Now, I think the matchups favor Clemson heavily in this game from like an actual strength on like their defensive line and their ability to run the football should dominate South Carolina along the line of scrimmage. But that should have happened last year too. The way Shane Beamer can change the conversation in the Palmetto State on the recruiting trail, if he were to win a second straight game at home and point to a 5-loss regular season Clemson team, I cannot pick a game that has more long-term implications than Clemson and South Carolina this weekend. It absolutely can completely change the conversation for both programs in a state where they are trying to recruit against each other. It is so juicy for one team with a losing record and one team that's kind of disappointing this year.
Yeah, I think I know Michigan and Ohio State, and there's going to be some other games with high profile, but as far as intrigue for this weekend, for me, this one is very high on the list yes. Because like you said, there is a lot of dislike, whatever you want to call it, between obviously the fan bases and just the narrative that's going to be said this offseason between these 2 programs. I don't think, again, it doesn't get at the hot seat conversation, but if Clemson loses to South Carolina for the second year in a row, considering they're a touchdown favorite, the matchups favor them. It's not gonna be a pleasant conversation for Dabo, who have to get Tyler from Spartanburg to call back in and fire him up before the bowl game. And for South Carolina, it's pretty simple: win, and you get to game number 7. And they faced a difficult schedule. They've had a lot of injuries this year, but they had a 4-game stretch at home to finish the season. They've checked off 3. This is the toughest one left. Matchups, though, really favor Clemson on paper. Like you mentioned, South Carolina's offensive line has been a problem spot all year. Clemson's defensive line, big strength. On the other side of the ball, South Carolina struggles to stop the run. Maffa, Shipley, 1-2 punch favors Clemson. But weird things happen at Williams Brice at night. And I think that's the only, I think, if you want to make a formula for South Carolina to win, it's Spencer Rattler having a huge day, turnover to special teams. Yep. Williams Brice home crowd, something like that. The X factor, the intangible, because on paper these matchups favor Clemson.
And that 4-game stretch to end the season for South Carolina, not exactly a bunch of world beaters, not a hugely difficult stretch, but the last 2 would be home underdogs. And if you can win as a home underdog in back-to-back weekends against your arch rival in state and sort of right now one of Shane Beamer's biggest coaching rivals in Mark Stoops, I think that's a hell of an accomplishment for a team that I thought was going to limp to the finish and struggle to get to a bowl game, and they still might not. But the matchups here clearly favor Clemson. So, again, Dabo Swinney being able to stop the bleeding, for lack of a better term, with this program and sort of change the conversation in the state is of the utmost importance currently for Clemson. Whereas with South Carolina, again, 2 straight wins over Clemson and 3 straight bowl games to start my career at South Carolina is how I go recruit in the state. This is all about next year. Like, it's all about the offseason conversation. Yes, I agree with you. In theory, Clemson should dominate the line of scrimmage, and that should be the end of the game. But Xavier Legette, Spencer Rattler, down the field, take shots, got nothing to lose, desperate team at home. I'll take Clemson because I like line of scrimmage warfare way too much, but my God, it's hard not to pick South Carolina here.
I will tell you, it feels like one of these games, the underdog is going to win, and there's a feeling that it could be this one for me. Every time I start talking myself into South Carolina, the desperation, they've got the better quarterback here in Spencer Rattler.
Yep.
I just go back to the line of scrimmage, and I think Clemson's just better there. But hey, somebody's going to get picked off this weekend, and it could this is where a very desperate South Carolina team could come through.